Inner city economics. Money in versus money out. When I think about economics in general, I think about the flow of money from one place to another. Places where money flows to are richer than places that money flows out of. We shop at this grocery store called Woodman's. When May was an infant, her and I would go to Woodman's every Saturday morning to buy groceries for the week while Meg slept in. Meg breastfed the kids after they were born, and as much as I wanted to help with that process, I lacked the requisite tools to be helpful. My consolation for that inadequacy was to wake up early when May did and either sit with her and watch TV or go do something productive. This continued when she was transitioning to solid foods, and the same thing happened when Dex was born. This habit of going to Woodman's early on Saturday mornings continued for years. The Woodman's we shop at is in a near suburb of Milwaukee called Oak Creek. Oak Creek has expanded since I started pushing a cart with May still in a car seat. At first, the shopping plaza added a Meijer, which is a combination grocery store and big box retailer, kind of like a super Target. Then they added a Goodwill and a Buffalo Wild Wings. Then some apartment buildings were built on top of other smaller shops. Eventually, a Chick-fil-A opened up and a Starbucks was put in across the street. Homes in Oak Creek are desirable, and the school system there is one of the better ones in the metro area. It's a place where people want to live, and the money flows into Oak Creek. It's not a rich suburb, but it's not poor either, and it's become more wealthy over the years. People there had professional careers and work in Milwaukee. The median household income is just over $86,000 a year, which is 3 times the median from my zip code. The population has almost doubled in the last 30 years because people want to live there. That's what I mean when I say money flows into a space. Its desirability attracts people with access and means, and the standard of living across the community increases over time. The same thing happened where Meg and I are from. I remember when Lake in the Hills was more or less the houses in my neighborhood. Surrounded by farms in all directions, I could ride my bike to the house of anyone I went to elementary school with. Then a subdivision was built to the east of us. Then townhomes were built to the west. A movie theater was built next to the 3 grocery stores that were added. Then the farms across Randall Road were turned into houses. Then the Target was built near the high school. The Best Buy opened and the Algonquin Commons were constructed while the rest of the farms were turned into subdivisions. Boulder Ridge, a high-end subdivision on a golf course, was added at some point, and the money flowed into Lake in the Hills and its sister town of Algonquin. I don't have a ton of feelings about farms turning into houses or the Chili's opening up. Those things just happened. But they happened because money flowed from wherever the people living there went to work into wherever they went home at night, so the money could be spent in close proximity to where they woke up in the morning. The construction of new places for people to spend their money is evidence to me that money has flowed into a space long enough for someone to make the investment in time and financial resources to construct a building for the people to spend their money in. The juxtaposition of Oak Creek and 53206. Since the time I brought our now 13-year-old daughter grocery shopping on Saturday mornings, I've watched the town around Woodman's grow. During that same time, I've watched my neighborhood remain stagnant or decline. I do not have a fundamental issue with spaces growing and evolving. I think that they should. I do worry about spaces like mine declining because someone chooses to take advantage of the space. Over the last couple of years, out-of-state landlords have been buying property in all sorts of places, but are doing so in large numbers in neighborhoods like mine. When my neighbors go to work, they go to work at places that are close by. Poverty inhibits someone's ability to travel long distances to go to work. If you are reliant on public transportation to get to work, the places you can work are limited to where the public transportation can take you. If the bus doesn't go there, you can't work there. Even if you have a working vehicle, traveling a long distance to go to work would be financially restrictive or potentially unreliable based on the condition of your vehicle. And I buy older cars typically. I've never thought about buying a brand new vehicle. I know that a car loses half of its value in the first 5 years of its life. I know a car is a depreciating asset And because of that, I try to buy good used cars with right around 100,000 miles on them. I think I've really only owned one car with less than 100,000 miles on the odometer, and we bought it last year with only 14,000 to go until it hit that milestone. When I test drive a car, I ask myself if I'd want to drive that car across the country. Not because I might at some point, but that's the metric I use to decide if the thing is worth buying. Is it a strong runner? Do most of the things in the car do what they're supposed to do? If the answer is yes, I'm fine with driving it. I would not drive 80% of the cars I see in my neighborhood across the country. If I had to reliably transport myself half an hour to work every day, I would not choose most of what I see driven on the streets in my neighborhood, which limits where someone can realistically look to find work. The close proximity to work and home means that the money made at their job stays within the community. If the wages earned at these jobs are enough for the bare minimum, food, shelter, utilities, and maybe transportation, the flow of money is used up for those things. If someone from my block pays rent, the money flows from where they worked into their hands and then to the landlord who owns the house. Owning rental properties myself, I understand that flow. The tenant goes to work and earns a living. Some of that living is used to provide a place for them to live, and that money goes to the landlord to allow the person to continue living in the property. Roughly 65% of the households in 53206 are renting their space from someone else. When someone pays rent, a portion goes to an insurance company to pay coverage in case something unexpected happens. A portion goes to property taxes. If there's a mortgage, some of that money goes to the bank, and the rest goes to the landlord. The rent money after expenses flows toward the landlord. If the landlord lives anywhere else other than within the neighborhood, the money flows out. At a third on average, housing is a family's largest expense and contributes significantly to the flow of money. I think people should do whatever they want, whatever makes them happy. If you live in California and you want to buy 15 houses in my neighborhood, more power to you, I guess. But I wonder if that same person understood the flow of money and what that does to my neighborhood, if they might start to question whether or not that actually makes them happy. I'm not a big fan of someone telling me what I can and can't do. I think we should make decisions based on how those decisions will ultimately impact the greater good of the world around us. Do we make the world better, or do we promote the degradation of the parts of the world we impact or interact with? I think analyzing the flow of money and resources helps us to understand how our impact affects the greater good of the world. The ridiculous economics of buying real estate here. I like complex problems. When we wanted to turn our alternative school into a project-based learning high school, we had to figure out how to change public perception of a school without changing the name or drastic action from the school board. It was a big knot to untie. Another knot I've been trying to untie for years is how to make renovating houses in the inner city profitable. I haven't figured out how to do that yet, so if you have any ideas, let me know. I can, however, describe the knot to you. Properties in 2006 and again in 2022 reached all-time highs. Homes in 2006 were selling for about $75,000, and the same was true in 2022 and early 2023. The housing stock in 53206 is old. Our house was built in 1905, and most of the neighborhood is similar in age. When the market stabilized after the crash in 2007, houses sold for about $20,000. Today, in our neighborhood, they're selling for about $35,000. The ceiling for home values is part of the knot. Homes here rarely exceed $100,000. I've got a lot of spreadsheets, and one of those has the values of the properties we own. Only one of the homes has an entry for above $100,000, and it's not the one that we live in. That particular house, Charlie's house, was bought for $35,000 and has at least, it's probably more, but $50,000 worth of material costs associated with the renovation. There were at least 2,000 hours of labor included in that remodel. And if we use the total cost of the property, my all-in cost for the building and the garage repair, I have $85,000 invested. At an approximate value of $100,000, that means my labor added $15,000 of value. $15,000 added value of labor at 2,000 hours is $7.50 an hour, which is about what a kid makes working at McDonald's. I've got a friend who responds this way when I told him the title of the book, Bad Neighborhoods. He said there are no bad neighborhoods, just ones that haven't been invested in. I think he's right, but nothing is ever as simple as it seems. Complex problems have layers. Not only is my neighborhood not one that regularly receives the benefit of investment, it might be a terrible investment financially if someone chose to do so. I've been able to make the numbers work, but only by working for very little or free for 15 to 20 hours a week for years. That's why I'm not sure the typical metrics for success of an investment are the only ones worth considering. This is where impact comes in. I turned 40 last year. When I think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs from a financial perspective, I think we enter the world trying to survive. That's how a lot of us were in our late teens and early 20s. Eventually, most of us figure things out and we move from survival into comfort. In our 30s, we concern ourselves with moving from comfort in the moment to longer-term financial stability so that when we decide to stop working someday, we do not have to worry about money. Once we take care of our needs, we can move on to our wants. The problem with wants is that we, as humans, have all different thoughts about what we want. Our wants don't have a logical stopping point. They can go on endlessly. If you can set a boundary to your wants, then what? And I think the next step might be impact. One of the main purposes of writing this book has been to describe inequality. Whether we are talking about housing inequality, income inequality, educational inequality, or inequality around the physical spaces within a community, the more we understand the inequality, the louder the inner voice becomes that says we should do something about it. The call to action is the first step in impact. When we talk about the work we do at We Got This, we describe our interactions on Saturday mornings as drops in the bucket. Using the metaphor of the conditions here as a bucket, each time someone pushes a kid to understand the value of hard work, that's a drop in the bucket. Every time someone sees a glimpse of a better future for themselves, another drop is added. The cumulative net effect of those drops is impact. Every day, someone who previously lived in an unstable housing situation wakes up with stability, another drop is added. When the flow of money moves away from one space long enough, a neighborhood like mine is created. To put things back to how they should be, investment is needed. That investment can be quantified by financial markers, or it can be quantified in impact. Impact is harder to measure, but like any other type of investment, we should expect to see the benefits of the investment in the long term. Just like I don't like someone telling me what I can or can't do, I don't love being told what to do. Of the things someone told me to do in my life, one that I haven't minded is to consider the impact you want to have. What will you look back on at the end of your life and be proud of? I do that from time to time. Think about what I am proud to be able to say that I have done. On the list are things like be a decent husband, a good dad, and that I was able to invest in my community, my neighborhood. I'm proud of the investment because I believe the neighborhood deserves it, and that investment will pay off for the community in the long run.